Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Front page of The Sun then.
Yeah.
Louise, the
Biggie.
Queen backs a Brexit, apparently.
Yeah, this is a bit of a biggie, really. Exclusive bombshell claim over Europe vote.
Well,
Queen
it's a biggie if it's true.
Backs a Brexit. It's sort of covered in...
Sources say.
Sources say,
Yeah.
exactly. Apparently what happened, it was during the coalition...
But no flat denial.
During the coalition...
I've got a flat denial
That
here
is not
for
a
you. I'll
flat
give it to you
denial.
in a second.
We've already
Go
had
on.
this discussion. You got
That
annoyed
ain't-
with me.
That ain't a flat denial.
All right,
Carry on.
okay, sorry, Louise, give us a story. Give us a story.
So essentially, it was a lunch at Windsor Castle during the coalition, and it was Nick Clegg and the Queen. And apparently, the Queen, it's a source, it's an anonymous source. I presume, and a new term here, we have a Brexiter, so somebody who wants to campaign
Well,
to leave.
it says a highly reliable source.
Yes, but clearly it's a Brexiter source, because otherwise, you know, clearly it's somebody who wants us to
But
Brexit.
it could be a senior Brexiter source,
Well, we don't
i.e.
know.
a minister?
It's unnamed. It's an anonymous source. And it says people were left in no doubt about her views in Europe. She apparently said that EU was heading in the wrong direction.
And that's up to Brexit, does it?
Well, that's the point. Does that mean she thinks we should Brexit? Who knows? What is interesting is that Nick Clegg says he doesn't remember it, and the palace...
No. To be clear, he said,
absolutely no recollection.
as I told the journalist, this is nonsense. I've no recollection of this happening, and it's not the sort of thing I would forget.
I have absolutely no recollection of it. And the Queen says they haven't... well, the Sun says they've not expressly denied the heated
Well, he
debate.
also said, no doubt you'll speak to someone else and they'll say, I was there, I heard it, fine, but I really can't remember it at all.
Right,
that to me isn't, it didn't happen.
Well, a Buckingham Palace spokesman said the Queen remains politically neutral, as she has for 63 years. We would never comment on spurious, anonymously sourced claims.
Again, is that the Queen did not say anything negative about Europe? No.
There's a different thing. The Queen saying something negative about Europe is different to saying the Queen backs Brexit.
That's a different thing. Yes, I agree with that. But
we'll move over the line a little bit there.
Ever so slightly.
I would say that
one and one makes 300.
From what has been said here, it sounds more like she's incredibly Eurosceptic rather than definitely
incredibly Eurosceptic.
Yes,
incredibly Eurosceptic.
He's winding himself up into an express
I don't
frenzy.
understand Europe is one of them.
Well, who does?
My favourite
the EU
line
is heading in the wrong direction.
My favourite line is from the Eurosceptic.
That's been Eurosceptic.
Eurosceptic Tory MP Jacob Rees-Mogg. This is his quote. The reason we all sing "God Save the Queen" so heartily is because we always believe she is there to protect us from European encroachment. So clearly we sing "God Save the Queen" because it's an anti-EU anthem.
Jacob,
I bet they did it at his school.
Jacob,
Sorry.
stop it. Stop it, Jacob. It's not funny anymore. It's not
Made me laugh.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
Aisha Hazarika and the political editor of The Sun, Tom Newton-Dunn. Thanks both for coming in. Let's jump straight in with our favourite story of the night from your paper. The Queen backs Brexit and all the confusion behind who said what.
Well, this is an absolutely unbelievable story. I hope it's not unbelievable. It's just an amazing
You don't really
story.
mean it as in unbelievable, do you?
Incredible.
Incredible story.
Incredible. I think that's
what
like
you
going
meant to
for. But what I love about this story is it's International Women's Day, and lo and behold, finally, we hear a senior woman say something about Brexit, because Brexit has been very much dominated by lots of boys in the Bullingdon Club so far. So the Queen, according to Tom Newton-Dunn, has made an intervention, and she has had an altercation with Nick Clegg at a lunch, and she's made her views clear that she's not a fan of Europe. Now, I think a lot of people will be stunned by this revelation. The Queen is not meant to get involved in any of these issues, especially anything as sensitive as this. But I suppose it wouldn't surprise one to think that the Queen is going to have a strong view, but I think we need to really speak to the journalist.
Are we surprised?
And find out what actually happened, Tom.
Believe it or not, paper reviewers generally feel rather uncomfortable when their own story pops up on the screen. Normally we get to slag off other people's, but it's just my good fortune to be here tonight. This is, first of all, we are reporting a claim. We have been told by some pretty strong sources that this happened, and there are two things that are supposed to have happened here. One is that the Queen had a pretty strong debate with Nick Clegg during a lunch at Windsor Castle a few years ago, when he was Deputy Prime Minister. Nick Clegg is famously very pro the European Union.
How many years ago?
A few years ago.
Okay.
We're aware of a date.
Before Brexit was even a word.
Grexit was a word by then.
Oh, well, okay.
The conjugation was alive and well. Anyway, it was in recent times, quite recent times. And she made her feelings very clear on European integration, the route Europe was going down. And as we understand it from people who are very close to people who were at that lunch, that the Queen took umbrage to what Nick Clegg's views were and expressed them strongly. There's a second incident at Buckingham Palace when she met some MPs at a drinks party. They asked her views on Brussels, perhaps teasingly, and she came out and snapped at them very angrily. "I don't understand Europe," was a quote that we're also directly quoting her as saying in the paper tomorrow morning.
That?
That was again within the last few years.
OK,
so,
well, let's hear what Nick Clegg had to say.
We should.
We've just got a quote from Nick Clegg. He tweeted tonight saying, Ari, the Sun story, as I told the journalist, this is nonsense. I have no recollection of this happening, and it's not the sort of thing I would forget. That last part is clearly true. You wouldn't forget.
So that journalist was me. I've spent a good chunk of this afternoon on the phone with Nick Clegg, and I met him in the House of Commons as well to have a discussion about this afternoon. Actually, he never said the word nonsense to me, and I would just ask you to look at that quote. It's what we call a non-denial denial in the trade. It doesn't actually deny saying anything. And I'll just read out what he said to me this afternoon, which was, I don't have a photographic memory, but I do think I would have remembered something as stark or significant as you've made it out to be. No doubt you'll speak to someone else, and they'll say, I was there, I heard it. Fine. Well, I have a different version of events. He's not denying it. Crucially, we put this back in Palace as well this afternoon. They haven't denied it. They've said we don't comment on these sort of spurious allegations, and the Queen is apolitical. And indeed, in public, she is. And it has to be said, this was all in private. No one is claiming that the Queen has made some powerful intervention publicly, because she would try very hard not to do that. It does have to be said, however, the Queen does have form for entering into political debates, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. The most recent example, of course, was the Scottish referendum, when she quite pointedly made her feelings clear to some people as she was coming out of a church, where she said, you need to think very carefully about what you're doing to the Scottish voters, thereby being seen as a call to stay within the Union and for people to vote down independence. So we're not saying this definitely happened. We're saying people are saying it definitely happened. And if you look at the age demographic, for example, on the way people are voting or intend to vote in the EU referendum, you can draw a completely direct line from young to old. And the older you get, the greater the chances are of you not wanting to remain in the European Union. Her Majesty the Queen is 89 years old.
Okay.
She's of that generation.
What do you think? Do you walk away thinking, oh, perhaps the Queen is anti-Europe?
I don't feel that from this story I come away thinking the Queen has got opposite. I think the Queen is smart enough to know that any intervention from her is going to be sort of dynamite on this. And the whole thing is so finely balanced at the moment. But what I think this highlights is actually on both sides of the campaign. I am personally for staying in the EU, but I think both campaigns have really failed to get any kind of emotional heart and soul lift off, really. The fact that journalists are scrabbling around for stories, the stories seem to be around senior people in British life making a comment about it and then people criticising them for having a comment. And I think one of the things that people are getting quite frustrated about this is that actually the kind of really important stories about how the decision, whichever way you go, is actually going to affect people's lives is the thing that's really annoying. And I joked about it earlier, but I think what lots of people are kind of getting really annoyed about, it's loads of posh men in suits having debates where they throw about lots of headline statistics and they try and out-fact each other. Or it's one side complaining against the other side that they're not playing by the rules of the game. There's lots of split stories on the...
Let's take us to the Mail then.
Yeah.
Well, I just the last word on the Queen. I simply say we're not advocating anyone needs to go out and vote Brexit. We're not even saying the Queen will do that. We're simply saying this is what
You're not doing it yet. He's not doing it yet.
This is simply what appears to have happened, and it's of interest.
Okay.